Good
Good
evening,
evening.
Dominica, Dominicans at home and abroad, friends of Dominica, wherever you're joining us from. Good evening and welcome to another episode of Roots Connections on Q right here on Q95, the big station. You already know this is our number one program for featuring the people, the organizations, and the new and ongoing projects which are geared towards advancing Dominica, especially as it relates to financial opportunities for our brothers and sisters at home in Dominica and around the world. As we work collectively to advance Dominica, we ask the question, what role can each one of us play with this mission? So on Roots Connections, we also take a deeper look at the issues that are affecting us with a view towards making impactful changes. We all know that we live in a world where change is the only constant. So we're always looking at the changes we should be taking advantage of, but we also look at the changes we need to make in order to move our country and our people forward. You know, we continue to face so many battles in Dominica, but here on Roots Connections, we especially recognize that in order to effect the changes we are seeking, Dominicans must be financially independent so that they can be free to make other important decisions, such as who they will elect for government. So, again, whether you're joining us in Dominica, the region, or the rest of the world, welcome to Roots Connections. This is episode number 65 for today, February 28th, 2024, and I am your host, Simone Matthew. Today, we have another packed program for you, and today we are focusing on the future of our children. As we've seen recently, the government has been unable to meet its scholarship obligations to so many of our students, including students who are attending or at least attempting to attend Midwestern State University, which I'm a proud alumni of that university. So we are seeing that the government is having quite a bit of challenge meeting these scholarship obligations. So we have to ask the questions, what are the options for funding education? So whether we are speaking about, primary school, secondary school, tertiary level education, what are the options for funding education? So we definitely want to tune into this program if we have children of school age that we care about. But even beyond that, we have to have a conversation about wealth generation. So, how are we generating generational wealth for our children so that we are putting our children in a better financial position? We are creating a better financial foundation for our children than many of us had when we were growing up as children. So we are very happy. We are joined by two men who are very competent in this area to help guide the conversation. We are very happy to have Mr. Felix Thomas Jr., who is a consultant of IG Wealth Management out there in Canada. And, I like to think of him as our resident financial consultant because this is a man who always makes himself available. I text him today, hey, Felix, you want to join me in a program? He says yes, because he's so passionate about financial literacy, giving back, educating our people, guiding conversations like this. So I really want to thank Felix for always being such a great resource to us. And then we have a new member that we're bringing in, and hopefully this will not be the last time that he's joining us. We are joined by Mr. Chris Mitchell, also out there in Canada. And he has many different roles, but one of his roles is that of author. So he's the author of The Little CEOs. And CEO is a little bit different. We'll hold that surprise just for now. He'll tell us what his definition of CEO is, and I think we will find it fascinating. But before we get started, also, I want to say a very special thank you to Mrs. Lorraine Del Sol. She was the one who recommended Chris for the program. And we know that she's a huge supporter of Roots Connections. So I want to thank her for recommending Chris. Lauren, I know that you're listening. So thank you always for supporting the program and for recommending Chris to be on the program. So let's go ahead and give a warm Roots Connections welcome to our guests as they unmute their mics and they just tell us a little bit about who they are, their connection to Dominica, and a little bit about their upbringing. And as they do so, I will go ahead and share the Facebook Live to everyone who's waiting for me to send them the link. So go ahead, guys. Chris, you can feel free to go ahead.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. So yes, Chris Mitchell here. Born and raised in Toronto, Canada. I am a son of a Dominican. My mother, Lorraine Del Sal Mitchell, is Dominican. My father is of Guyanese heritage, but many would say he's an honorary Dominican by the amount of time he spends on the island. So for myself, currently, I am working in the tech industry at a company called Kubra, where I'm a client success manager. We offer, technology solutions to utility companies across North America. I have spent previously about 10 years in the financial space, working at Fidelity Investments and RBC. But, I really had a passion for investing and just thinking to myself how I could have taken different steps in my financial journey is sort of what led me to write a book. I've never really had an experience as an author. I wouldn't consider myself even really to be a writer, but I saw that there was a gap in the market, and I saw that parents could probably use some assistance in having real conversations with their children about money in order to build sound financial principles from a young age, and that's what sort of inspired me to take on this endeavor and write a children's book.
Yes, thank you very much, Chris, and thank you for being here. Felix, over to you.
Okay, nice. Thank you so much for having me here this evening. I was actually born in Canada. 7 months later, I was shipped back to Dominica for being such a naughty baby. So I grew up in Dominica, went to primary school, high school, and college, the Dominica State College, majored in both accounting and economics up there. Then shortly after, I actually moved up to Canada, went to university for 4 years, got my accounting degree. Bachelor's accounting degree, and shortly after that started working at Scotiabank. Spent about 2.5 years to 3 years at Scotiabank, and then started managing my own financial practice at IG Wealth Management, and that's where I am today. So I'm basically in my 7th year doing that, where I help young families and seniors to build and protect their wealth, specifically with generational wealth, looking at insurance, estate, and taxation planning. I love doing what I do. If I was actually a plumber, I'd probably still be speaking about money, because it's just something that always excites me. And that's it for now. Unless if there's any.
Yeah, and I want to thank you guys for being here. But I think this is such an important conversation because it is one of those conversations that I find that we shy away from. For one reason or another, it always seems like people do not want to discuss money, right? And then we find ourselves in positions where, you have a child who's getting ready to head off for college, and now you're wondering, well, how do I seek funding for that particular child to go off to college? But before we get started with our discussion, so as you can tell, we have a lot to discuss this evening. But before we get started, we always want to pray for Dominica. We want to pray for all the challenges that she faces and everything that we need to overcome. So again, welcome to Roots Connections. We continue to work to position Dominica to take advantage and benefit from the world where change is the only constant. We are so grateful for the opportunity to be here. We are grateful for you, our audience, who are listening via the radio. On Facebook, you can find us on Q95 FM radio. and Push Past 10, and also on YouTube on Q95 FM radio. So we're looking forward to your contribution to this conversation because we want to know as well, how are you planning for the financial success of your children? What are you doing to build generational wealth? Because as you know, children grow up so very quickly. I swear I had a newborn the other day and she's turning 13 in August. So we all know that the time goes by very quickly. So if you're joining us on Facebook, don't forget to share the live. Don't forget to click the notification button so you will always know when we go live. We remain grateful to Mr. G and the Q95 FM radio family for the opportunity to come here every second and fourth Wednesday to tap into our human resources and to finally begin reversing that brain drain that has impacted the Caribbean and Dominica for so long. We are grateful as well to Lambi. Lambi, thank you for being here, and our engineer, Sherwin Norris, as well as DJ Sean, who work in the background to keep everything up and running at Q95. So if you're just joining us this evening on Roots Connections, we are focusing on the future of our children as we discuss beyond college funding. How are we building generational wealth and preparing our children for a successful financial future? So let's get started with our guests as they tell us a little bit about why are they so passionate about financial literacy. So what was it that initially brought your attention to the need to not only educate yourself about finances, but as well to educate our communities? So Felix, I'll start with you.
Okay, so sorry. Please excuse my sniffles and my coughing because I woke up this morning with that, and yeah, so I'm just trying
Yeah,
to.
and in Dominica, we're calling that the nasty business flu.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the nasty business took me.
So,
Yeah,
so Felix have nasty business, y'all.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Right, but I think almost everyone had some kind of situation in life where they realize that, hey, you know what, I lack money for something, whether it is for education or probably it is a car, or you ask your parents for something, and I mean, even they themselves wasn't able to actually just give it to you as you pleased, right? And at that time, it can be something that you could really get into your feelings for and really feel that, hey, you know what, you have to do something about that so that you just don't feel that way anymore, right? Now, I mean, growing up, a lot of people tend to preach that money is something that is bad. And as you've said at the beginning of the show, it's like a lot of people shy away from speaking about money. But it's a very important topic to introduce your kids to. You don't want them to go into the real world and realize, oh shoot, I need money for the real world, right? It's actually a necessity. Now, you'll always hear people saying money isn't everything. Nothing is everything. Love isn't everything. Hope isn't everything. Faith isn't everything. Same thing for money, right? But it is a tool to get you to wherever you need to get to. For example, Dr. Simone, you currently have your PhD, right? That was something that money was a requirement to achieve, right? Tuitions had to be paid, probably needed to be at a resident, and so forth, right? So you basically have the most respected, highest level of education that money was an essential tool for, right? So now, basically, that was something that, I mean, it was really just common sense at the point when I realized it, that, hey, you know what, if I need money for all the things that I actually want in life, and just for me not to actually go and bother parents, family members, and even friends for money, because I mean, it's kind of like something that's embarrassing to even ask for, or less to just have a conversation about it, right? So really and truly, I think money is something that we have to, as a people, and not just Black people, because I noticed that's something that's with probably every race, that money just tends to be a sensitive topic. And I think we just need to normalize making it more common to have those kinds of discussion, just basically to teach about money, and what it can be used for, and how it can be used the right way, using a budget or cash flow statement to basically just manage it properly and use it right to build your life.
Excellent. Chris?
Yeah, Felix, you very eloquently described that concept. I like the way you did that. Um,
Thank you.
and part of my reasoning, even behind writing a book, is around that same topic, right? Um, Money's often a very taboo subject to speak about in households. It's also considered a concept that maybe is beneath, the education of children. So it's an adult thing. And I think the negative effect to that is children go through life really not learning about it, right? If you don't have any formal introduction to it, and oftentimes the conversations you hear about money in households are negative, right? I can't afford that. We don't have enough. It costs too much, right? These very negative connotations about money breed negative results when children are actually handed money. So, yes, part of my reasoning behind writing a book was to sort of reframe the conversations, show children, how money can be handled from a young age, and give parents a solid gateway to have more positive conversations with their child about money. Um, and then I look at my own journey, and it really started when I started working, right? I get into, what is, considered the rat race or the 9 to 5. And I'm, 21 years old, and I say, what, I have to do this for the rest of my life? This is, this is, I don't know how I feel about this. And I start looking at the bigger picture, right? How can I fast track myself either to a retirement, or B, how can I create a better or more solid foundation for myself and my future children? And that's sort of where my investing journey started to begin. And that's where I started to actually educate myself a little bit more about money and how best to utilize it. So I think it's pivotal that we have these conversations with our children about money, because if we don't, they are destined to repeat some negative cycles that have already been ingrained into their DNA, because we've, as minority groups, we have been disenfranchised, and because of that, we're always playing catch up. And when you're playing catch up, you end up inadvertently spending your money on the wrong things. You're spending your money on what you think will make you happy, whether that be material items. We don't have the ability to have delayed gratification, and that lack of delayed gratification comes from wanting something now to make me feel better, because I know I don't really have what I want, and that is potentially enough cash in the bank, enough assets. So I think when we change that conversation, when we shift the perspective, we allow ourselves to raise children who have a better perspective on money.
Yes, and you're absolutely correct, because I think most of us can agree with you that the first time we really started thinking about money is when we got our first job. And what did we begin looking forward to? Buying stuff,
Mhm.
right? Because we equated money with the ability to buy all the things we wanted when we were younger, that our parents said, oh, you can't have this, you can't have this. So what did we do? We went out and we bought stuff. Nobody taught us, because, and we cannot necessarily blame our parents, because they themselves were not educated in terms of financial literacy. But we think, what can we buy? What can we buy? Instead of thinking, how can I invest this money? How can I build wealth? And how can I create generational wealth so that the next generation coming up after me will not have to be financially deprived the way I was financially deprived? So we have to have these conversations. We have to stop and have these conversations, because it always seems like the excuse is, I'm busy, I have too much to do, I don't have the time to have these conversations. But maybe the truth of the matter is, we are shy because we have not educated ourselves. And now there's so many resources on the internet. We have people in our community like Chris and Felix who can provide the education. So I also hope we can talk towards the end of the program about the potential of doing some webinars, the potential of doing some more Facebook Lives, so that we continue the process of educating our people so that we become more financially literate. But let us start at the beginning, the very, very beginning. And
Could I
let's talk about.
could I add something? Yeah, so
Yes.
Simon, I just want to give you some flowers, because the thing is, as you correctly said, the internet is a marvelous tool, and
Yes.
basically it's something that we can use to create change. So the
Mhm.
flowers I'm to give you is actually taking the initiative of, making that change, and basically having the voices play to actually fall on the ears that need it to actually enact that change for a better Dominica,
Yeah,
because it's necessary.
yeah, absolutely. And it's something that we need. So thank you for that, Felix. But let us start at the beginning because I want us to look at financial literacy at every level. So let us talk first about the what can we do when we have young children. So we're going to look at the younger children, the children in primary school. Well, here we say middle school. So I'll kind of go back and forth with the terminology. I'm not sure what you guys use in Canada, but we will say primary school, middle school, and then high school and college, because I want to make sure that we are covering every aspect of this financial planning for our children's education and also for building generational wealth. So if we have a parent who has a young child, what are some of the thoughts? And Chris, feel free to integrate the book as we're having the conversation as well, because I'm sure that you have chapters in the book that cover different aspects. And you can also feel free for our people on YouTube and Facebook, if you can show us the book when you're talking as well. So again, if you're not on Facebook and YouTube and you want to see the book that Chris will be showing, you can jump on Push Past 10, or you can jump on Q95 FM radio on Facebook, or on YouTube, Q95 FM radio, if you would like to see the book as well. So let's start the conversation. We have a parent who has a young child. What are some of the options that parent should be looking at in terms of creating that generational wealth, in terms of funding that child's education?
Felix, you want to?
Yeah, I could go ahead, no problem. Okay, so what I would say is just that basically starting by designating an account specifically just for that child, so that way that every single dollar that you put in that account is just for that child. Now, one way that I like to look at dollars is as being as your dollars, they're an army, and each dollar is a single soldier.
Yes.
And what you're doing, yeah, and basically what you're doing is every single dollar, you basically teach those dollars to go and recruit more soldiers, right? So that it actually builds. And that is basically the way you do generate wealth. So with that account, you have to make sure it's an account that by the most basic means is something that is going to earn a substantial interest, amount. So whatever tool that you have available in whichever country you are, in Canada here, we have what is called an RESP, where you can actually invest that money and the government does provide some kind of assistance in the way of a grant, just because you're putting money into it. I'm not aware of any accounts like that in Dominica, but I know that Dominica does have accounts that do earn interest and also dividends at like the credit unions. So if you actually have it in an account like that, then you basically have your soldiers recruiting more soldiers for you without you having to worry about anything else except just making a contribution to it on a frequent basis. Now, as far as frequent basis, what I always advise my clients to do is set up an automatic contribution, because the thing is, you cannot trust your mind to actually always go and manually contribute that money into the account. That just won't happen. Every Friday, you will not do that. You'll probably end up in a bar and totally forget it one of those Fridays, right? But if it's automatic, then it's out of sight, out of mind. It happens and it's earning that interest there for you, right? And for your child. The other thing to do is when your child actually reaches an age where they do understand proper English and they have a good level of common sense, you could actually just show them what you're actually doing for them as well. Because that way you're actually introducing them to money, right? Seeing from that age, if they're seeing, okay, this is what mom is doing, this is what dad is doing for me, and this is the reason behind what they're doing. Basically, as you know, kids actually learn by example and they imitate. They will actually take those habits, right? If they see you doing that every Friday, they're going to take that as a habit for whatever else that they may need. Believe it or not, our kids are actually very smart, and sometimes even smarter than us. Because I truly believe if our kids are not smarter than us, we actually did a bad job, really and truly. So the earlier that you can actually transfer your knowledge and wisdom to your kids is the better for them. You'll put them ahead of other kids who don't actually have that wisdom. And the thing is you actually starting to make your child be a proper human to society, because they're going to be someone of value growing up. And the thing with being someone of value is that money always follows people of value. All right. This is truly important. People of value, people with a skill, people with the education level that is required on the marketplace, they are the ones that money follow. Right. This is not stuff I'm making up. This is stuff that is in our eyes. If someone is an electrician, there's going to be a day that someone has an electrical problem. Boom. Right away, that electrician is needed for their services. Right. Same thing as a plumber. Look, we have the boss here in the back, making sure that everything is running right with the radio station. Because of the value that he can provide, he's there sitting there and actually looking over us and making sure, everything is moving smoothly, right? And same thing with you, Chris, as well, right? Look at all the knowledge that you were able to put into a book, right? That is something where eventually you might even decide you're going to make another book because the demand for this book was so high, right? And people say, hey, you know what? We didn't get enough. We want more. Speak on another topic in relation to money, right? You're in IT as well. Your company didn't hire you because you didn't have any value. There's something that you could provide, right? And they will pay you for your worth. This is something that we all know, but it's like we just don't talk about it enough to actually have it downloaded in the subconscious of our children so that they actually digest that and grow with it and become that, valuable type of a person. So I think the account is important, but also the human that you're actually developing in your children is super important to attracting that wealth for their future.
And I want to come to you, Chris, but I also think we have to change our internal dialogue when it comes to money. Because I think too many of us think, I need to make more money. I need to make more money. And we're thinking, I need to make more money because we're thinking we need to spend more money. When in fact, we should be thinking, I should use the money I have to generate more money, which is what Felix was essentially saying when he was saying his dollars are soldiers, that he wants his soldiers to go out and recruit other soldiers. So rather than always thinking, what can I spend? I want to get a salary increase at work because I want to spend on XYZ. I want to upgrade my phone. I want to get a fancier car. I want to buy a more expensive house. Instead of thinking, I want a raise so I can spend more. Yes, you may deserve a raise, but maybe we should be thinking, I want a raise because I want to invest in XYZ. I want this money to make me more money. So we have to change that internal dialogue where we think of money in terms of its spending power, but we don't think of money in terms of its ability to generate more money, because we are investing that money maybe in property. We're investing that money. Maybe we have a friend who's starting a small business and we know it's going to be successful. So we have to change that internal dialogue in terms of what is the purpose of money? Is the purpose of money to spend more money, or is the purpose of money to generate more money so that we can eventually create that generational wealth to put our kids on a better foundation than what we started on? So, Chris, I want to come to you, and as you're commenting and making your comments, I want us also to start having that conversation about how do we teach children about money, because I get the impression that your book is a tool meant to teach children about money. So how do we start that conversation? What age do we start? What do we teach them? How do we teach them? So a lot to unpack right there.
Yeah. So, I mean, Felix, you touched on it. I think we underestimate how smart our children are. The conversations about money can literally start at any age. If you look at any, whether it be athlete, musician, anyone who really achieves the highest level of greatness, it's come from habit. It's come from starting something at a very young age and continuously doing it for a long period of time. And that is no different than investing, right? So I think when we implore our children to have that understanding of money from a young age, the sky's the limit for them. And, I look at my nephew, right? My nephew, he's now 5 years old, but from the time he was 4, he would be by my side when I'm trading. So I'm on my investment platform, and I'm, investing in futures. And at 4 years old, he can tell me which direction the stock is moving up or down, right? Some adults can't do that. So when I see, a little message like that, I'm able to give a 4-year-old, and he's able to say, the red candle is up, or sorry, the red candle is down and the green candle is up. Sometimes I could ask an adult that, they wouldn't know that direction, right? So right there, that gave me enough confidence to say, well, you know what, this 4-year-old child understands. If he understands, what can't I teach him, right? It's very easy for our children to pick up bad habits or bad things. It's immensely around them. But if you put the right things in front of them, they will adopt them. And, as Felix has mentioned, we are the example for our children, right? So if we are leading by example, if our children see us spending indiscriminately, if they see us constantly shopping, eating food, eating out, buying whatever, that's the example that we're setting, right? And I think definitely in the Black community, and this potentially is by design, but there's a message that, money is the root of all evil, right? I don't believe that. I believe that bad people will do bad things. Good people will do good things with their money, right? Having money or wealth does not make you a bad person. If anything, when the right people do get money, they are allowed to pour back into their community, pour back into their family, and create that generational wealth. So one of the things I think for me is very important, especially now in a very technology society, we are also losing the cash, right? We're losing the ability to hand cash, transacting cash with one another. And when children don't see cash, what is money, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's numbers behind a screen. They don't even have a concept of cash anymore. So I think a very important practice is, if you want to teach your children about money, give them physical cash so they have something that is tangible that they can associate dollars to. Kids now, they have cell phones and they have video games, and they have the ability to make in-app purchases in those video games with the click of a button. It could be $50, it could be $100. They don't understand money. It doesn't mean anything to them. So you have to give them tangible cash so that they can actually feel, see, and use that cash in reality, and not in this sort of digital world that we are living in. So I have a copy of my book here. I think everyone can see, and I lit it to the camera correctly.
Read us the title for everyone on the radio.
Yeah, so the title is Wesley Wants a T-Rex. And it's actually, Felix, you mentioned it. So it's a series that I'm creating. And the series title is The Little CEOs, which stands for Child Entrepreneurial Officer. So I wanted to, in making this book, I never saw a child of color being able to create cash in a children's book. Just something that I hadn't seen. And I said, you know what, there's an opportunity here. And I can make, many of these books so children have an example of someone who looks like them spending cash and using cash in the right way. And that's sort of where I came up with this series. So I said, how can I make, a book that is fun, relatable, digestible for children, that they'll understand, and that a parent can now draw an example from, right? As much as we want to teach our children about money, it is a little bit of a foreign concept, right? It's not very fun. It's hard to engage with them about money. A lot of the investing principles are from an adult's perspective. So if we can break it down on a more simpler level, with the same concept that you're using for adults, but the messaging is one of a child can adopt. So my first book here, I use dinosaurs. Children seem to just love dinosaurs. I don't know why, but they do. So I use dinosaurs as sort of a gateway into speaking to children about money. And then, I have other books to follow up. I think my second book will probably be around superheroes. So making the messaging around money in an easy, digestible, relatable way, and showing children that, being a entrepreneur is a viable career path, And it can start at any age. You don't have to be an adult. It's not a concept that is reserved for adults. A child could be an entrepreneur too, with the right, mindset, with the right, foundation, upbringing from their parents. Really, they can, achieve whatever they put their mind to.
Yeah, and what is the age range for this first book?
So, I would say, my nephew's 5 years old, and I read the book to him, and he understands it. So I would say anywhere between, if you're between 4 to 6, you probably have your parent read it to you, and maybe 7 to 11, you can have your child probably read it themselves.
Now,
Yeah.
you mentioned dinosaurs, but just give us a general premise of what we can expect in the book. Do you have tools? Do you have stories? So just kind of tell us, what can we expect in the book in terms of presenting it to our children?
Yeah. So, I mean, most books that I've seen, if I've seen or encountered any educational books for children, they've been very, I would say, basic in terms of just very, how do I explain, investing means this and savings means that, but it's not an actual story. A child can't associate or relate to that. So my idea was create a normal children's story with the concept of money baked into it. So in this book, there's a young boy. He has, an obsession or a fascination with dinosaurs, and he plays with dinosaurs with his grandmother. His grandmother gives him a very small bit of money to go to the store to buy a toy. When he's at the store, he realizes, well, I can't afford the actual toys that I want. So how am I going to get that? So that's where that sort of delayed gratification comes in. He could buy a cheaper toy, or he could save to get the more expensive toy. So he goes on to essentially save his money. And then in saving his money, he realizes, he said, well, I have, $10, $15. I never had this much money before. I kind of like having money. So how can I purchase, the toy that I want while still retaining the wealth that I just earned or gained? And that's where his sort of entrepreneurial spirit ignites, and he figures out a way to use his passion to continue to make money while actually investing in the product he wants, purchasing the toy he wants, but also using that toy to now make money with his friends. So that's sort of a very simple story that, a child can grasp. A parent can easily relate that story to children in a real life practice. And that was sort of my idea behind it.
Yeah, excellent, fantastic. So, Felix, I want to come to you as well, and this is a question for the panel. But we also, I'm telling you guys, the comments are coming in on Facebook quick and fast. So, thank you guys. Keep posting the comments. I will get to them. But Wallace, I like what you said about we must look beyond the U.S. and the Canada. Unfortunately, we could not get someone from Dominica to join this conversation. But if anybody is listening on the radio, if anybody is viewing us on Facebook or YouTube, and you have information pertaining to Dominica in terms of wealth management, wealth building, in terms of paying for school fees and education in Dominica, we would be more than happy to have you contribute to this conversation. But guys, here's the other thing I am thinking, right? Because when we look around, we see again change as the only constant. Because one of the things I'm noticing is that a lot of places now are cashless, right? You go to a lot of places now and they will only accept a debit or credit card. So what are the implications in terms of how do we teach our children about money when we are moving to a cashless society? So what are your thoughts on that?
I'm so happy you asked that question, because Chris was actually saying some things, and it did spark that idea, and it's kind of like a self-awareness thing for me, because you see, with money being cashless, where we don't have it in our hands, it's no longer tangible as it was before. It's like that kind of dropped the value of the money itself, because when before, let's just say, for example, you were going to buy a vehicle, right? And you had to walk around with probably $5,000 in your pockets. You fill up your two pockets, or you hold like a whole suitcase with money, right? If you lost that suitcase, it's like you lose your life, right? You probably want to jump off a cliff or something. But now it's like, that is something you could just write on a check, or you could just send that money electronically and so forth. And it's like you sending that money, you don't have that same like feeling, when that money leaves, as opposed to like when you're handing off that bag.
Well, you don't have to see it, right? You don't even have to,
Exactly.
you don't have to see the money move. You tap your debit card, you tap your credit card, the transaction's complete. You didn't see anything.
Exactly. And I was realizing that to myself, that that's kind of dangerous, But I mean, at the same time, it is like just a natural evolution. We humans, we always evolving, and that is just, a natural evolution. Who knows? Money might even not even be numbers at some point. God knows, like whenever that will change.
Yeah, absolutely. Because and the reason I said that is because now we have to, many of us are not using online banking because again, we're scared. I knew one person, this was probably in 2004, and she had never used an ATM in her life and she refused to learn.
Yeah.
So I think it puts the onus on us to learn so we can teach. Go ahead.
Exactly. Like one day it might even be just our fingerprint we have to like use to basically pay for a transaction.
I mean, it's happening already. That it's not here in North America yet, but if you look at some of the Asian countries, you can literally scan your face to pay. So they are obviously a little bit more advanced technologically than us, but these things are coming. They can be very dangerous because, as you sort of mentioned, you lose that concept or that value of what am I actually doing. One of the best things my father always taught me is to carry cash on you. And he said, try not to use your debit or credit card because you lose track of how much you're spending. Right? If I have $200 and I spend $150, I know how much I have left.
100.
If I only use a debit card or a credit card, the spending can easily get out of control.
Exactly.
Right? Not seeing, you don't go into your bank every transaction and then do the math calculation and see how much has come out of your bank. So I think that is a very dangerous thing. I think part of it may be intentional because we do live in a consumer economy where we're motivated, incentivized to spend our dollars on goods and services that are not in terms of that are not tied to wealth building. So I think a little bit of that is intentional to ensure that our dollars are going out and we're not retaining our cash. And it's very easy for children to fall victim to these new, practices and principles on how cash is spent. So personally, for me, I know that I think as long as we have the opportunity to still do it, I think putting physical cash in your child's hand is very important. The sum or the amount doesn't matter. It's just something tangible that they can associate a dollar value to. And I think that goes a long way to them starting to say, this is that. And even if they do eventually transfer to only online or electronic, at least they have that foundation to build off of what something was. It's definitely a difficult concept to grasp. And I even had that sort of dilemma myself when I wrote the book. As you can see on the title here, I don't know if you can see, but the young boy is holding a dollar bill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When I was writing that, I was actually speaking with my sister, and she kind of mentioned, she's like, I don't even know if these children know what a dollar bill is.
Right.
True. Yeah.
Point, but how do I tell the story about money without anything physical, right? So even in writing a simple children's book, it got complicated, right? So that is a challenge for us.
Yeah, so I think we have to keep thinking in terms of the future, what the future will look like in terms of money. But for now, we will consider the fact that we still have cash money in circulation that we're discussing as well. Other thing I was thinking as we're having this conversation is what is the environment like in our homes in terms of money? I think it was you, Felix, that mentioned, are we only talking about money when we're talking about the things we cannot afford, the things we cannot do? Or are we having those healthy conversations where I think somebody on Facebook mentioned it, that we're giving our children an allowance and we're telling them, well, this is what you can afford and this is what you cannot afford? Because unfortunately, the negative side of what we're speaking about today is the fact that for many of us who grew up with nothing, as soon as we're able to afford, what do? We create entitled children. where we just want to give them, give them, give them. So they never really learn the value of a dollar. So, what is the culture? What is the environment like in your home with regards to money? Are we always talking about money in the negative, or are we finding positive ways to talk about money? So, I think that is a conversation we also have to have
Yeah,
with our
definitely.
children as well. That
Yeah,
it's a
definitely.
healthy conversation. How do you have a healthy
Well,
conversation about money?
of course. Well, you see the person who mentioned the allowance. I think that person is onto something, because the thing is giving your kids an allowance is kind of like an introduction to for your kids to the money. So if it was me, what I would do is I would give them the allowance to first see what they would just naturally do with that money, because that actually kind of like make you learn even more about your kids, right? Tell them, okay, this is what mommy and daddy use to get your milk or your clothes and whatever, right? Look some of it. Let me see what you're doing with it, right? And take a look at how they go into what, like, just take a look at whatever they going to do with it. And then along the way, I think you should just give them some guidance. You can say, hey, you know what? Let's say your child name is Joe, right? Hey, Joe, I see that you bought chewing gum with your money, right? You spend all your money on chewing gum. The next week you got your allowance, you spent all your money on video games, right? And so forth. How about you try to, like, build it up for bigger things? Or you probably just ask them, okay, would you like to have a car like mom and dad one day, or would you like to have be able to buy your own clothes, buy your own food, the basic item. And that's kind of like where I actually wanted to mention something about what Chris mentioned earlier on, where he was saying that the little kid was able to save up money and basically was able to purchase whatever he wanted, right? And that kind of like spark a bulb in him, saying that, hey, I like this feeling. Because the thing is, it's not just about having the money itself. Money actually gives you that feeling of independence, right? Gives you that feeling of like you have some kind of control over your life, right? So the earlier we can actually have those kids manage their own money and just guide them through managing it, I think that is something that is critical. Now, just looking at kids, right? Kids like to play. Kids like games, they like to read and so forth, right? The funny thing is, the first time I ever played this game called Monopoly was just back in, I think it was in 2014. And while playing that game, I was like, yo, why I never played this game before? Because I have to tell you, that game is life. Seriously,
Yep.
that game is life. And see how Monopoly is so real. It didn't have where you could end up in prison.
Jail. Don't pass go. Don't collect $200.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that is like one of those things where it's kind of like a simulation where we could introduce our kids to games like that, books like what Chris has to offer, to start building their knowledge and skill around money, and also with the allowance that builds everything around it, right? Because the best way to learn is really through experience. That's really the number one way, and also through the mistakes of others. So also just thinking of like when we talk about the negative connotations with what we do with our money, we have to kind of like humble ourselves in a way too, where it's that we don't hide our mistakes from our kids, because our kids can learn a lot from our mistakes. Like, for example, some I saw in the comments too, someone asked about if we invest in the stock market. So I personally do, right? And I think that, like, there's millions of ways to make money. Chris did mention about investing in futures, right? There's you could keep your money just in a savings account. Currently, there's what you call cryptocurrencies. There's also real estate. There's so many different ways, or so many different things you can put into your money to make it double, triple, quadruple, right? And it's basically just choosing something that you probably have a certain comfort level with, and start with it, learn it. I can tell you right now, you are going to lose money. As long as you're taking a risk with money, it is healthy to lose some of it, because the thing is, I have to say, my losses has been my greatest lessons. You know, whenever you say I make a profit, it's like I just there feeling myself and then I go and lose my profits. You know, that probably happened to everyone that doing, you know, some kind of proper investments, right? And I think that is something where, see how Chris mentioned about his nephew too. Oh, this is so
Mhm.
awesome because the thing is, man, Chris, because of you having those types of conversations with your nephew already ahead of the other 4 year
And
olds.
ahead of him too, he'll be ahead of him.
Exactly, yeah, 100%. Because you know, if you even look at like fellas like Bill Gates and all of them, right? They always says you have to spend 10,000 hours to master any skill, right? So if you start that at 4, your 10,000 hours going to come so much sooner, right? Your nephew might end up being a 10-year-old millionaire,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know, who I may have to seek financial advice from, right? You know, so it's just to say that, man, do not hide your mistakes from your kids, because the thing is, you learn from your mistakes. Just imagine what they would learn from it as well, you know.
Mhm.
And just basically give them the tool to use themselves, guide them through it, always provide guidance, do not shame them. You know, it's easy for us to shame people that we love, like our kids, our spouses, family members, and all that. But really and truly, we have to just be mindful to communicate in a loving and caring way, to just foster that knowledge and to have them be open to receiving that knowledge from us. Right?
Mhm.
Those are all the crucial um, things I think that's relative to money as well.
Yeah, and I think we have the luxury here in the US and in Canada to talk about investing. But I also think for our brothers and sisters in Dominica, that might not necessarily be an option because, they're not in the US and Canada. But we also have to think along the lines of how can we earn more money? We know that it is very difficult to find work in Dominica, and it is one of the reasons a lot of people, they will bow to the whims and fancies of the powers that be, because if you lose your job, that's it. It's very difficult to find work in Dominica. But I also want us to be thinking along the lines of how do we earn money? First of all, how can our children earn money? So what additional chores, and that's a system I've implemented it at our house, right? So your basics are free, right? You're entitled because you were born into this family. You're entitled to food, shelter, clothing, education. But everything else you want, you got to earn it, right? So what can you do? What can we teach our children to earn money, right? Even if we are strapped for money and we can offer them $1 for maybe, sweeping the kitchen after dinner, putting the dishes away after dinner. We have to teach our children the value of money. But even for us as adults in Dominica, we also have to think of what are my skills? What skills I have besides that 9 to 5 job that I am doing, besides the job that I am doing, maybe working in a restaurant, maybe working in an office, doing a 9 to 5, working in a clothing store, working as a plumber, working as a professional, an accountant. What other skills do I have to offer? So maybe I'm an accountant in a business, but maybe I can use additional time to be a private accountant. Maybe I can teach people about accounting. Maybe I can teach people about plumbing. So we always have to think of how can we earn more money? And again, we're not thinking about how can we earn more money so we can spend more money. We should be thinking, how can I earn more money? So maybe I can invest in that little gig that I'm doing on the side to make it more profitable to the point where it will be in such high demand that I can quit the regular 9 to 5. And I have to give a lot of accolades to our young people in Dominica because I see it all the time. And that is why we always talk about how brilliant Dominicans are. No matter where we are brilliant because I see it all the time. I see how creative our young people are when I see the businesses that they're posting on social media. When I see what they've been able, a braiding business, a flyer creating flyer business, a cooking business. So it kind of just tells us that there's a lot of hope for Dominica. We know that life is difficult down there and employment is scarce, but a lot of our young people are finding the creativity to to generate income for themselves, to be able to create opportunities for themselves. But I think a lot more of our young people just need the inspiration, just need the additional push to be able to get to where their fellow young people are. So what are your thoughts on that in terms of earning additional income and the importance of teaching our children to not be entitled, that they too should be earning an important income? And before you guys answer that, Felix, I just really wanted to piggyback on that monopoly thing, because let me tell you, it is real and it teaches some hard lessons
Yeah,
because we've played
100%.
that game at our home. And if my daughter has to lose, she has to lose. It's life, right? So it teaches her that life is not always going to be smooth sailing, right? You're not always going to win at every game. You have to learn to deal with disappointment. So I highly recommend that families, we begin first, get Chris's book. We're going to make sure you have the link to get his book, because that's a great tool. Contact Felix for advice. And also, if you have access to Monopoly, you want to play that game, because it will teach your children some very important lessons about money. So, Chris, let me come to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one, right? Everyone's sort of situation is different economically. Um, I think if you have a young population that has proper guidance, I mean, maybe they don't have the resources in terms of jobs, but if they have the right mindset, I think if they are directing that creativity and that time they have towards good or solid endeavors, they'll have positive outcomes. I think what you see in terms of working additional jobs, I think sometimes we work additional jobs, or we have a passion project that we do on the side, and then just like normal, we take that cash and it gets spent in ways that are not, for our benefit. They get spent on material things. Me personally, any money that I make that is not tied to my 9 to 5, it gets invested, because I've already figured out my standard of living. With the money that I make, I know what I need to survive. I know what I need to have, my want list, my if it's beyond my needs. So when I make additional cash, my first intention isn't I get to get a new pair of shoes. And I think that's just sort of a mentality shift. And I think we also have to look at, and I don't know the rules around the abilities around investing in Dominica in particular, but I think we have to also think about how we are trading our time for money, right? So we can only work so many hours in a day. We have, families, loved ones, obligations outside of our 9 to 5. And it is fantastic to have a passion project or, a second gig, but it is also important that we are putting our dollars to work, as Felix said, right? They need to be little soldiers. They need to earn money for us. And when we are trading our time for money, there's only so much that you can earn. If you look at, some of the most wealthy people in the world, their money doesn't come from their base salary. It comes from their investments, right? If you look at government, which, is a whole different conversation, and I don't want to get too much into it, but government officials that have the ability to invest, these people aren't millionaires. The bank says they're millionaires. Their net worth or they're millionaires because all the money that they use goes to investments. So I think when it comes to young people, definitely pushing them to follow their passion, whether it be, tutoring, design, art, technology, whatever it may be, but giving them the guidance to say, hey, now that you have these dollars, direct it in the right way. Use it to grow assets or your cash over time. And I think it's just that message of delaying gratification and knowing that over the long term, you will reap the benefits of your investments. It's just a hard concept to get across to young people because nobody wants to wait, 10 to 15 years to see the fruits of their labor. And I think that's sort of one of the hardest hills to get over when it comes to investing with young people.
Yeah, and you see, when we're looking at Dominica, I have to say I actually want to big up the people of Dominica in
Mhm.
the sense that you see Dominicans, I don't know if there's another country that actually produce as many hustlers as Dominica, to be perfectly honest with you, because it's like given such a difficult situation, right? We have
Certainly.
people still actually adapting and figuring out a way to make something from nothing, you know, given the younger people and even sorry, middle-aged people and the older people. I have to say, you see, Dominicans, one thing I like about them as well, about us, is that even though we don't have so many opportunities, like we don't have an abundance of opportunities and so forth, but really and truly, it's like if you see we actually sit down and we think with ourselves or we think with our family members, we do come up with something, some way, somehow to actually, make something. I have to say that. And that is
Mhm.
something that really, it always inspires me because we probably the best people at actually having a good time as well. But it's like we do earn our good time. And I wouldn't even look at any Dominican as being an entitled person. Not many. I mean, there's entitled people everywhere, you know? There's entitled people everywhere. But it's like as soon as you give a Dominican an opportunity, the way how they excel at it, and that is why I think like so many people I know in Canada, America, or wherever, and they are Dominican, I find they're doing like something real good with themselves, and even in the country of Dominica too, you mentioned it, Simon, about the creativity.
Mhm.
Dominicans have like a next level of creativity that even in myself, I had to realize is that at a certain point in my life, I kind of like lost my own creativity. And it's like going back to Dominica, that kind of like reignited that creativity because I seen how fellas just decide, hey, you know what? Even your car or your scooter, your motorcycle, is put whatever it is that in your mind on it, Whereas it's like if you look around in the US and Canada especially, yeah, it's like everybody just have the same like black or white, even the buildings, same color, everything looking the same. But in Dominica, you see so much customization. Even if you know what, I saw something about on social media about how we have gold chains, right? Even to that thing there, even that we being so creative with, like all that is things that we're just customizing. So just imagine if we Dominicans, we actually have a platform where we can actually just export our creativity and just listen to the calypso music as well, right? How we form words together and make that make so much sense that sometimes it's like sometimes you actually need to put that in a book to teach the nation because in just one song you can actually just be educated from a song in Dominica. You check me, and it's like I have to say that is something that basically keep the spirit. I think that is probably what we have, that we are rich in, because riches is not just money, really and truly, but we have such a rich spirit that anytime you see you touch that land, you actually feel that vibrancy throughout your whole body. You
Mhm.
drink the water, you
Mhm.
feel it too, just because the vibes just all over in the place. And I know someone that actually came from Trinidad and went to Dominica, and they were saying something like that. It's like, man, we they're saying how Trinidad have the biggest carnival and all that good stuff, right? But it's like what Dominica have that different, and it's something that you just cannot get anywhere else, is the vibes. The vibes. And the thing is, it's like we put our vibes in everything that we're doing. So I think what we have to do now that we have the internet, right, is basically use that internet to export our vibes and so forth as much as we can. Also to with looking at opportunities, right? I mean, anywhere that has a lot of problems has a lot of opportunities. Tend to look at Dominica as being a place that has a lot of problems. And I just tend to be someone who like to look at solutions to problems. You can look at a problem, okay, you identify it. From time you identify a problem, do not waste more time on it. Just think of like, okay, what is the solution to that? You know? Okay, if let's say for example, like you know what, one thing I've been hearing a lot about is like they taking light a lot and taking
Mhm.
water a lot. While I was down there too, that happened a couple of times. And while I was living in Dominica, it's like it was just common thing, you know. We find ways to get around that, right? Where it's like almost everybody have a generator, as an example, you know, for your convenience. But even when the light or water go, we still find a way to, you know, overcome that, right? Now, okay, we know that's a problem, right? Whoever are the people that basically doing the light and water thing, you know, I'm sure there's a solution that we can come up with. The thing is that we just they're complaining about the problem a bit too much, I would say, as opposed to like putting our energy towards the solution to that problem. Now, mind you, I'm probably not the best person to talk about those specific topics because I am not in water management, I am not in electrical management. So for me to actually say that I know what would be the solution to it, I really can't, you know. But I'm sure that we do have, whether it is that we have to um, import the skill or probably seek advice from someone who knows how to solve whatever the problem that that causes those things to happen. I think we can do it, right? Or we can look at alternatives where Dominica has an abundance of sunshine, right? Dominica has an abundance of water. We always boast in our 365 rivers, right? Those are things that we can use to generate the electricity or power sources that we need. We have a lot of wind. The hurricane is there sometimes, right? All those things actually generate some source of energy for us. So one thing I think we should even do as a people, if I'm being honest, is like if you see we could list like let's say the most common problems we have, like such as electricals, water, and all that. We say, okay, let us put a fund towards whatever the solution is for that specific problem. And then, with that fund, right? That fund is not money alone that have to be deposited to it, There's one thing I want to let Dominicans know. We have a wealth of skills, not just in Dominica, but outside of Dominica. There is a Dominican that knows how to solve these problems. You see what I'm saying? And if you see, we just make it be known that, hey, we are looking for a solution for it. If you have some advice, please donate your advice. If you have some kind of a tool that we can use, please donate your tool. Or, like help us to find whatever it is that we need to solve those things. See what I'm saying? Because it can be solved. If you really check it out, we tend to say as well that we have like a rough terrain where we cannot do certain things with the country. We're not the only country like that. We have other islands that are very near to us that have the exact same thing and they have overcome that exact same problem, right? We can actually seek advice from those islands and I promise you they will help. These people, the thing is like, if you see Dominica do better, everything around Dominica is going to do better as well, right? And we Caribbean people on a whole, I have to, man, every day I wake up, I'm happy. It's from the Caribbean I am, to be honest, because I cannot imagine being of any other race to basically live any other kind of a life, And that is because of just our whole heritage of being like such loving and vibesy type of people. And I think we just need to just focus that energy on the solution of those problems because it's like by now I think that is something that we could have already dealt with, to basically just, make our country move forward. It's not a huge step, but the thing is that if we actually take that step, make it move forward in that thing, there's so many other things that go in and follow that we're going to advance, and we can't that's just the one country because as you always know, no man is an island, no island can stand by itself. So since we have so many of us outside of Dominica, right, it's basically for us to come together and actually address the issues that we already know that's there. Like, see how you're doing your part, Simone? You know that the financial literacy is an issue, right? Look, right now, we're addressing that issue. I think we should probably have other professionals who, as I said, like in electricals and so forth, come congregate, collaborate to basically solve those issues because they can be solved.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, Felix, on so many different levels. And again, thank you to you and Chris for doing your part by being here to educate our audience, but on so many levels, because we are the most resourceful people. I mean, I just think of my own personal example, and I'm sure our audience can think of their examples where, I had my mom in Dominica pretty much taking care of us in the household. We had an aunt in Guadeloupe sending the barrels, right, to feed us, to clothe us. And we had an aunt in New York sending money, right? So pooling our resources together to create a better future for our children. And I also like the fact that you talk about solutions, because you're right. We spend a lot of time speaking about problems, but I think we need to spend more time thinking about solutions. And I know my audience very well. So I know the first thing they're thinking is that what about the government obstacles that are going to get in the way if people are trying to solve problems regarding electricity and water, or they're also thinking, oh, that is the government's responsibility to solve these problems. But you're right, we have so many resourceful people. And now what we're seeing emerging because of that whole power outage thing is people are going into solar energy. I'm hearing ads on the radio, I'm hearing infomercial about people offering solar power energy in Dominica. So again, what you're saying is so valid in terms of focusing on solutions. But guys, the time is speeding like you could not imagine. We have tons of comments on Facebook. We also have to go to the studio for the phone calls. But before we do, Chris, is there anything you wanted to mention real quick?
No, I'm okay. I really like the this conversation that we're having. Speaking for myself, when I do visit Dominica, I feel that vibe. I feel that energy. I see the passion in the young people, and I think it really boils down to tools, education, and people willing to put in the time to direct our energies towards the right endeavors. I think with the advent of technology and the tools we have capable with technology, if they're utilized in the right way, we will be able to unleash the passion and the youth of Dominica to the world and get more exposure for the country. More exposure means more economic involvement worldwide, and I think we'll reap those benefits when we are utilize our youth in a more concentrated way.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So before we get to the calls and the Facebook messages, again, you're listening to Roots Connections on Q. When we come back, we have a lot more to talk about in terms of funding education. What are the options for funding education? We also want to take a deeper look into Chris's tool. I'm going to call it a tool, Chris, because that is what it is for starting the conversation about educational literacy. But if you tuned in late, you're listening to Roots Connections. And today we are talking about the importance of how do we fund education for our young people. And that has to also be a conversation about training schools, about funding the opportunities for those of our young people who are not academically inclined to receive a skill so that they too can be successful in their life. So we're talking about funding education. We are talking about building generational wealth. And we are very happy to be joined by Mr. Chris Mitchell. He's the author of The Little CEOs, Child Entrepreneurial Officers. And we're also joined by Mr. Felix Thomas, who is a consultant at IG Wealth Management. So we're so happy that you're here with us this evening. Don't forget, if you're on Facebook and YouTube, please share the live. Let everyone know that we're here. But for now, guys, take a sip of water, mute your mics. Let's go over to the studio so that Lambi can invite our callers to the conversation.
Good evening. The numbers are 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257, and 305-432-9624. Let me run those numbers again. 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257. These are all local numbers, and the overseas or international number 305-432-9624. And we're standing by for your calls. Back to you, Simon.
Yes, thank you. So a pleasant good evening to everyone who's joining us on Facebook. We see David Joseph. We have a call coming in.
Yes. Good evening, caller. Please go ahead.
Yes. Good evening to you, Lambi, and good evening, Simone, and your guest online. It's been a while, Simone.
Good evening. Nice to hear you.
Yes, yes, it's been a while. I absolutely love the conversation you guys are having today. It's extremely appropriate. Just a personal story. Over the weekend, I heard you talk about Monopoly. So my daughter came by and she's like, "Dad, you want to play Monopoly?" And I'm like, "Okay, let's go ahead and do it." And during the game, we playing, and she's laughing at mom because mom just had a little bit of cash, and she's blocking everybody from buying houses. So while we play the game, I'm trying to teach her, hey, you know what? You got to try to get some property. And Sue said mom was able to get some property. And while she blocked everybody and we couldn't get any property, I had a whole bunch of cash. She had a whole bunch of cash. And in 10 minutes, because we had to pay rent to the property, to the owner of the homes when we land on her property, well, guess what happened? We lost the game. And it was fun. I made fun of her, but I tried to teach her a lesson and say, in life, if you want to build wealth, it's not just about having cash on hand. It's converting that cash into something that makes money for you, like buying property. And gentlemen, when I heard you guys talking, Simon, I said I had to call in because we've been on your station, just trying to have that education so our people can think differently as to what we were taught. And a lot of times people think wealth or generational wealth or getting rich is about, earning a lot of money. But it's building wealth. And I can earn $1,000 a month and build wealth, and somebody can earn $50,000 a month and still end up being poor. And that is because of what you do with that money, how you make that money. And I like the analogy the guy used of making these little dollars be soldiers, making more soldiers for you. And through my experience and conversation with a lot of folks, especially minority groups, we are at a disadvantage because of our history, where we come from. We were not taught these things, and we are kind of playing catch up. So the topic tonight is really relevant. And while you were talking, something came to my mind. At the end of every investment is a commodity, is a service, is an item, is a good. That is why it's so critical to have production. And in the education of wealth generation, there are some other critical components that is required. One is patience. One is self-control. One is, and when I say self-control, I am talking about trying not to be too greedy, trying not to be envious. Because a lot of times, it's not because we can't, it's because we let the what makes us human, the greed, the selfishness, the lust, the envy, get a better hold of us. And instead of having a long-term plan, thinking not just of ourselves, but our children or our grandchildren, we sometimes make decisions for instant gratification, which prevent us from building wealth. And that is one of the things that we have to fight. And I think it's a very, very, very important component in educating our young people to make right decisions. So when you hear the priest and the pastors teaching of these moral values are really important in how we generate wealth, build wealth for one another. So, Simon, there's so much to say, but I'll just stop at that and say, good program. I think there has to be a continuation of re-education of our people in terms of what it is to be rich, what it is to earn money, what it is to build wealth. And before I go, I heard the guy talk about the creativity in our society. Too long, our education system had not jived with that long-term growth. We've trained a lot of doctors and lawyers, and people focus so much on the academics. But if you think of it, most lawyers are a cost to a company. Most doctors are a cost of doing business. And it's the creative spirit, the engineers, the people, the creative mind who build things. The Bill Gates and the Mark Zuckerberg who didn't finish college, but they had that creative gene, that creative spirit that build things. And I think what we need to do understand is that at the end of every investment, there has to be something created. And that's something that is created of value, comes from the individual creativity, talent, the thought. And we need to focus a little bit more on those aspects of our human and personal development to realize the wealth and the wealth generation. But thank you, I'm listening. Good program, and keep it up as always.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Lennon. Always wonderful to hear from you, and thank you for your contribution. And this is such an important conversation, guys, because as Lennon was speaking, one of the things that came to mind is there is an analogy that is often used that if you give a wealthy man and a poor man $1 million and you wait 6 months, the wealthy man will be richer and the poor man will be poor. I'm sure you guys have heard this. And it's because of the values, the mindset, the education. So again, it goes back to not how much you're earning, but how are you letting that money earn more money? And money is not a dirty word. Get over it, people. It is important to talk about money. It is healthy to talk about money. We shouldn't shy away from it, because when we shy away from it, our children shy away from it. Lambi, the call, please.
Good evening, caller. Please go ahead with your call.
To me, I understand Solomon says, you're buying and selling this coin from things and level at your doorstep. You're buying and selling this coin from things and level at your doorstep. So all the emphasis is on money, but money doesn't bring you closer to the Father, It makes you far away from the Father, because all your loss is on money. And the man just said, money doesn't make you a bad person, but all you can do is to gain your wealth.
Yes, absolutely, caller. That is a very good point. It is about how you earn that wealth. Are you earning that wealth legitimately? Are you earning that wealth honestly? Or are you stealing to earn that wealth? So you are absolutely correct. Thank you for calling. Yes, Lambi, go ahead.
Good evening, caller. Please go ahead again.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Same very good conversation going on tonight. I remember when Felix came to me and said to me that, you have more money than you think you do. And there I am thinking, hey, I'm living paycheck to paycheck. And how is he telling me that? But once he put me to sit down, put pen on paper and explain to me, I could see where he was coming from. And thank God, I'm doing a lot better than I was doing back then. Good conversation. Keep it going.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Felix. And that is why we bring on our experts, because looking at your particular situation, I can help you. When we have experts like Felix on board, excuse me, guys, I'm having a little issue here. But when we have experts like Felix who can direct us, and we have the tools that Chris can provide us with, we need to tap into those resources. And yes, we need to pay them, because that is the other thing that is always a concern with our Dominican people. We want the information, but like Felix don't have to buy bread tomorrow for he and his family, right? Chris doesn't have a light bill to pay. I see Chris lights on. It's not free. He's paying somebody for that lights, right? So we have to be willing to pay our professionals for their skills, because that is how they too are building generational wealth for their families. So let us grab some comments from Facebook real quick. I was saying, Wayne Liebert, nice to see you. Sherry, nice to see you. Linda Barron, August, nice to see you. Celia Douglas is also with us. Great to have you on board. Let's get some other names. Joey Lloyd, nice to see you. Thank you for being here. Carl Coffey James, Vanessa Shillingford, great to have you on board. Avril Bertrand, Cecilia Newton, Allison Peltier, nice to have you on board. Athalie George is also with us. Great to have you here. Daphne Paul, Lillian Alexander, Celia George, Joe Boston is here. Ireno Progress is here. Shatta King, Leroy Mitchell, Kendra Bazil, and so many more. Thank you for being here. Thalia Thomas, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of the conversation. So let's say some comments. C. Ferrara says, I'm listening to my nephew. So which one is the nephew of C. Ferrara? Please put your hand up.
That's me. That's me.
Peter Thomas, good evening to you. Jonathan Commodore says, yes, good evening, Dominica. For what it is okay. It's the people that don't understand. It's their time that is limited on this beautiful island. So, guys, kind of just take a note if there are any comments that you would like to respond to. Let's see, David Joseph, our biggest problem is that we like to follow the Joneses. We would rather have $100 in 1,000 name brand bags or invest in expensive clothes and sneakers than invest in something worthwhile that is going to pay off in the future. Meanwhile, those names behind the name brands continue to build their own personal wealth. And David, not only are they building their own personal wealth, but they're creating the generational wealth for their family. Make sense to you? Sharon Dorrival, nice to see you. Wallace Centilier, we took a comment from you. Let's see what else you have to say. I must say that has not, okay, I'm not sure what you're referring to here, so let's take another comment. All right, we took that one before. Maria Lazar, well said, Chris. So thank you guys for being here. Lillian Alexander loves this. Thank you, Lillian. Lauren Del Sol, always great to have you on board, Lauren. Thank you again for bringing Chris to my attention. She said, let's get our kids invested at an early age. Interesting topic. So guys, I'm just gonna take one comment per person because we have so many comments. Tina Bell says, when my kids were growing up, like eight years and up, she means, I would give them a little pocket change, which they actually had to earn. I also had individual envelopes for them, one save, one church for their offering, and one nitty gritties. Believe me, it got them into knowing how to budget. Very good. Carl Coffee James, nice to see you. Great vibes. Our children definitely need to be educated early on the value of money beyond just having it to spend, but rather how to use it to invest and generate wealth for the future. Thank you, Carl, for this. Christine Bernadette says, my son, keep up the good work. I'm proud of you. God bless. Who does Christine Bernadette Bino Roberts belong to? Do you guys recognize that name? Felix again? I feel like we're on a game show. Chris, come on, catch up. Oh, that's funny. JESP says, very insightful and intriguing conversation, gentlemen. Well spoken. Okay, let's see who else we have real quick. Scroll down, get another comment from someone else. Greg Baptist, good evening all. So guys, thank you so much for being here to be a part of this conversation. Petra Carbon George, always nice to see you. Wallace says we are the most vulnerable. The risk associated with Dominica is much higher than any other Caribbean island. Thank you for that. David Lanclos, always great to have you on with us. So just taking a few of the comments on Facebook real quick. Fuel De Dashin, great information. Thanks for sharing your time, knowledge, and expertise. Alistair Irish, always great to see you. I'm always locked in, Doc. You know that. Yes, Alistair, I know that you're always locked in. And we appreciate you. Yes, so that comment about the brand names. And I always think to myself, so let me get this right. I'm going to pay $600 for some name brand bag, and then I'm going to advertise for you for free because your logo is all outside the bag. I just never got the concept of why we are so consumed with looking wealthy by purchasing these name brands. So any thoughts on that, guys?
Yeah.
I don't. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say one of the things I find, most interesting about the allure of purchasing name brand is we are essentially giving money to another family and then wearing the emblem of another family.
Advertising for them.
Advertising for another family instead of saying, I'm going to take those dollars and invest them in my family. And I think that kind of goes back to why our wealth doesn't transfer generation to generation, right? We oftentimes, our parents or our elders will work to create a life for ourselves or for our younger group, and then the entitlement or the lack of needing to work hard for our money leads us to lose that wealth within a generation. And I think if we have the right education system with our children and have the right principles from a young age, it'll only produce the outcomes to retain that generational wealth. If you look at a lot of wealthy families, it's very evident why wealth does not pass down generation to generation, or why it does, right? If you look at wealthy families, wealth that lasts more than one generation is because the family has structured an investment plan for their children's future, whether it be a trust, whether it be investment accounts. There's guidelines and restrictions that are placed on children's funding, right? The parents have worked hard to attain the wealth, but that wealth is just not handed over flippantly. They're saying, we have this money, we've earned it. If you do X, Y, and Z, you will receive the benefits of my hard work. And through that, you will be able to invest in your own hard work. And in that way, you retain the wealth within your family generation to generation. But when the money comes too easy, or we don't understand the work that went into it, it goes out the door. It goes to these name brands. It goes to these companies, and we're essentially funding the wealth of other families that don't look like us. So I think that is a fundamental principle that we have to teach our children about: retaining wealth within the family, keeping it within our community, having the ability to afford to give back to our country, invest in our country, and not invest in other assets that don't serve us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Felix, I want to come to you, but since the time is speeding by, I also want to make sure, Chris, that we can share the link to your book. So if you have, is it available on Amazon?
Yes, it is available on Amazon worldwide. I will send you a link.
Yes, send me the link and I can post it on Facebook so that everyone can click on it. And I will also mention it for our radio listeners as well. Felix, you wanted to add to that topic? Name brands?
On the topic of name brands, I'll just say that is something that is basically all over the world, really and truly. I'm sure Dominica is not the country that's spending all the money on name brands, but I think with purchasing name brands, I wouldn't say that is really the issue. Is basically, you see, I always start with creating a budget, and with the budget, you just have the power of telling your money where to go. So if you're earning your money and you choose to buy name brands, I don't see a problem with that, as long as at the end of the day, you're not complaining that you cannot purchase food, right? As an example, so I remember I met this lady who, surprisingly, she was actually in her 50s, right? And when I sat down with her and we were creating a budget, she spent about $500 a month on just clothes, right? But at the same time, she was crying that she's not able to pay off her loan on time. And you see, with just that situation there, that is just a typical situation that is in a lot of people's lives, where it's like, okay, if you can put all that money towards that, how about you try probably cutting that in half? Like, let's say if we're using a number of $500 every month, if you say, okay, instead of putting, how about trying to put like $250 out of that 500 towards paying off a bill or towards building wealth? Because the thing is just because you have so much time is basically one of the most important things in building wealth. The more time you have, is the more your wealth can actually compound, right? Compound interest is one of the greatest wonders in the world, and time is what you have on your side with it. So if you see, you can actually just make sure you're allocating your money in the right places, not just on the name brands, because really and truly, looking from a long-term perspective, that really will not do much for you. Yes, you have to look good because you have to present yourself good. Plus, you look good, you feel good, right? So if that is what that's going to make you, get you to basically be, who you are, because the way we dress also is an expression of ourselves, right? So if that is how you want to express yourselves and so forth, no problem. But just basically put first things first, like prioritize. Do not basically take a loan just to buy a shirt or a shoe. so to speak, right? And just make sure your basic needs are met. You invest or you save first, then you spend. Don't spend, then save, because you'll just never end up saving. But I think it's just a matter of just putting the first things first, having priorities, and if your priorities are in line, then, go ahead and buy whatever else you can afford to buy, But yeah, that's what I just said.
Just to build off that quickly, the way I like to frame that conversation I have with myself about where my money goes is I say, I pay myself first, right? I get my paycheck, and the money that I earned, how much of it can I keep in-house? So whether it's directing $100 to investments, $100 to savings, $100 to crypto, whatever it may be, I pay myself first. I don't pay my mortgage first. I don't pay my light bill first. I don't give my money to other companies first. I pay myself first, and I pay my bills second, because at the end of the day, I'm most important to myself. I need to retain my wealth. And sometimes when we pay all these other entities first, then we look, well, I don't have enough to spend. I don't have enough to have fun. But if you pay yourself first, it goes a long way to ensuring that you are keeping at least some of that cash in-house, because obviously there are, a lot of living expenses that we do have to, incur, and that money that we put out month to month. So paying yourself first is a principle that I like to live by.
Okay,
Yeah, and I like that, Felix. Felix, I'm coming to you. I like that Felix had mentioned do it as an auto saving, because if we wait to get it done when we receive that paycheck, it's simply not going to work. So just set it up as an auto payment so that it automatically goes into your savings account. You don't have to think about it. It's one less thing that you have to be concerned about on a monthly basis. Felix, go ahead.
Yeah, just one last thing I wanted to say, which is it's not financial advice, but one thing I just wanted to mention. Please, people, try to educate yourself on some cryptocurrencies, because Chris just mentioned it. And I personally, thank God, one of my clients is the one who actually got me into it. So I personally been in it since 2019. And, a lot of the people around me, I put them on game. I think it's like right now, just based on what I understand from it, we're basically in a critical part of the cycle. So I hope that people actually educate themselves on it. By what I mean by the critical part of the cycle, look at like the Bitcoin halving, which is going to happen in April. I think that is something to educate yourself on. If you take anything from this, from this show about wealth creation, this is probably one of the easiest ways you can actually go and create wealth, no matter who you are, no matter what your skin color is, or no matter how you're sounding or how ugly or pretty you are. Okay, please go and educate yourself on some cryptocurrencies, because it's a marvelous time, in my opinion, to get in. And this is not financial advice. It's just, something I want to put my people on.
Right. And I think that is another conversation that we have to have, Felix, and I would be happy if you could educate us on that, because I think there is so much misinformation out there. There's so much skepticism, especially when you hear about the guy, what was his name? Fry, I believe his last name was.
Sam Bankman-Fried.
Yes. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, Sam Bankman-Fried was his name. Yeah, he was.
Yes. And what happened in his particular case, do you know more clearly than I do, Chris? Can you tell us about that?
So it was a bit of a Ponzi, what we refer to as a Ponzi scheme. Right. So he was using investor dollars to fund his own life and his own investments. And I think this really is a fundamental problem when it comes to investing in the Black community. As soon as something sounds good, or we get a taste of success, something like this happens, and we say, well, I told you this investing thing wasn't for us. I told you it was all a scam. And there's now a new out, or a new excuse on why you shouldn't invest. Oftentimes we get scared out of the market, whereas other communities will still continue to pour cash into these assets and watch them grow. So obviously, as Felix mentioned, this is not financial advice, but the way I like to go after it is I like to put money into the top players in whatever space it may be. So investing can seem overcomplicated. I think they purposely or intentionally make it seem very complicated to sort of keep certain communities out of investing. But the way I look at it, even if it is crypto, I invest in the top crypto, which would be Bitcoin.
Yes, go ahead, Felix.
Just a perspective I want to share, right? and it's on my own personal perspective, right? In speaking of crypto, because a lot of people think they have to be like a crypto guru before they put any money into crypto and so forth. But here's what I just want to share, right? If you see you can afford to put just $1,000 into it, right? Put it, okay? Just put it. Now, the perspective about that is, okay, let's say you never placed that $1,000. Now, all you have in your pocket is still that $1,000. There's two things that could happen if you actually put it in. That $1,000, it could lose value, or that $1,000, it could honestly even go to zero. If that is the case, right, God knows you can go and make another $1,000, right? Money is a renewable resource. That $1,000 just went to someone else's pocket, and everyone has the money that you want to put into your pocket because the wealth is there, right? Now, what if you put that $1,000 in, right, and it actually made that money for you? Now you're onto something. But if you never put it in, right, what the hell can you do for yourself? Nothing. If you never put it in, like, and it actually went to, let's say that $1,000 turned to 3,000 as an example. Tell me, at that point, what action can you do? You cannot do anything at that point in time, right? But if it lost, you can go and make it back. Or if it lost value, yes, you can make those dollars back, but you tried something and you learned something, right? And if it won, then guess what? You won. But the way that you lose is by basically doing nothing about it and waiting until you are some guru on it, when basically the whole train leaves you down, right? And you just didn't make anything. So that is another thing that is actually critical, is just our inaction is what that actually keeps us behind as a people in general. You know, inaction is basically a decision, and that is something that, you know, like with inaction, there's nothing for that, right?
Absolutely. And I went ahead and posted Chris's Canada and US Amazon links, but the link is a little bit long. So Chris, just tell us again the name of the book so that folks can look it up on Amazon Canada or US.
So no matter where you are in the world, you'll be able to find it on Amazon. But if you search Wesley Wants a T-Rex, or you search by Wesley Wants a T-Rex.
T-Rex. Okay.
Or you search by the title, which the series title, The Little CEOs, you'll be able to find it on Amazon as well, just by searching.
Right. So I think that one is easier. So for our radio listeners, and again, wherever you are in the world, you have access to Amazon, you can order it. So I think the easiest thing to remember would be The Little CEOs.
Yes.
I think we can all agree. So simply go on Amazon and type in The Little CEO if you have a child that you want to begin educating, because again, we do not want our children to start where we started. Many of us did not have a good foundation, a good financial. I thank you, Jonathan, for posting it. We did not have a good foundation. We had a negative relationship with money, and now we are finding we have to educate ourselves. So imagine what would happen if we begin to educate our children at an even younger age. So guys, I really want to thank you guys for joining us for this conversation. And I think we also have to think beyond just funding education. So we know about the 529 plans. We know there's an option in Canada. And if anybody wants more information about these particular plans, we would be more than happy to share Felix's information. Felix, go ahead and send me your contact information in the private chat, and I will be happy to share it with our audience before we wind down. And we also have another great financial advisor, Mr. Havis Badwill. So Havis Badwill is a fantastic financial advisor. So if you're in the US and you want to begin having that conversation about planning, whether it is as simple as a budget, let us stop being intimidated by money. Let us stop thinking that, we do not need to focus on money, because money is our future. Money is the future of our children. So whether it is saving for retirement, which we all hope that we will be able to one day do, or whether it is saving to be able to put our children through school, it is an important conversation. So I can recommend other financial experts. So you can simply email me. My email address is pushpast10@gmail.com. So again, that is pushpast10.com. So that's the website. The email is at gmail.com. So pushpast10@gmail.com. And no, this is not a financial endorsement. Nobody's paying me to promote my people, but I think it is important that we are able to share our people as a resource so that we can advance our brothers and sisters in Dominica and elsewhere. So guys, the last thing I want us to touch on today, because we've been talking a lot about, planning for the future in terms of education, but just in general, in terms of building generational wealth, what else should we be looking at? So let us talk about the importance of, for example, paying down your debt, because many of us, I think the credit card debt in America at this point, in the US at this point, is in the trillions.
Mm-hmm.
Americans now own trillions with a T, trillions of dollars in credit card debt. So let us talk about the other ways that we build that generational wealth that we're talking about. So the importance of reducing debt, the importance of potentially buying a home, whether you're in Dominica, the US, Canada, the UK, wherever you are. How do we gain those assets as part of our portfolio so that we have something to leave to our children in the future?
You mentioned Havis Badwell. Yeah, big up to him. One thing that I know that he would be talking about here too is life insurance. I think life insurance is something that not only creates wealth, but it protects our wealth as well. Because a lot of us, even if we actually have a lot of wealth, when we pass away, it ends up going to the government or to some other kind of institution because we didn't protect it properly. So I hope that a lot of us, because I've been seeing progress with it, but a lot of us, our mindset or our perspective on life insurance does need to improve, so that we look at it as another wealth building tool, because it is really the fastest way that you can create wealth. And by saying that, what I mean, it's like, okay, if you're someone who have nothing, right? Basically, at least you have kids, or if you have debt or whatever it is, instantly wealth is created basically upon your death. That's the catch with life insurance, is that for it to be of any benefit, something bad has to happen, right? That's it. But I think we should really, just look at life insurance as well as another tool for wealth creation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's, yes, I'm coming to you, Chris, and it's yet another misconception, because Dominicans just have a fear of life insurance until something tragic unfortunately happens. So if you are someone who has anybody dependent on you, so if you're a single mom and you have children who rely on you, if you're a father, you have children, nephews, nieces that are reliant on you. If you can think of anyone who is dependent, you should have life insurance. If your children are all grown and they all have their careers, you don't need life insurance. They're grown and they can take care of themselves. But if anybody depends on you, and no, life insurance does not mean that you want the person to die. I cannot tell you how many times I have heard this. From time people start talking about life insurance, the first comment is, yeah, but you want me to die, man? Why you want me to get life insurance? As if the life insurance is going to kill you. So we have to change that mindset.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I have never met someone who's not going to die. So I don't know why they say this. They make that comment, because I don't know anyone who's not going to die.
Yes.
Like, basically, it's kind of like a guaranteed way to ensure that the people who's dependent on you, as you mentioned, actually has something, should you pass.
Yeah. You definitely need to look at life insurance as just another financial tool, because that's essentially what it boils down to. It comes back to that, those uncomfortable conversations that we want to have with our family members. We don't really want to speak about money. Nobody really wants to speak about death. But life insurance is just a fantastic tool that we don't utilize in our community. And if you look at sometimes why we don't retain wealth generation to generation, is because when we do pass, we do not have the correct measures in place to ensure that our wealth is being transferred. Even as Felix kind of has alluded to, I may have a policy. I may not have $1 million, but I may have a policy for $1 million, right? So upon my death, wealth has been generated that will be passed to my children and potentially my grandchildren, depending on how I structure my life insurance plan. Life insurance also is a fantastic tool to generate wealth in current day. So speaking about myself, I have a life insurance plan where I can essentially take loans against my policy, right? So I can use the current plan and I can draw from what is considered my death benefit. So let's say my death benefit is $1 million, and I need 10 grand. I could take 10 grand from my life insurance policy plan. If I was to, God forbid, pass without paying that policy back, my plan would now be, $900,090. I would reduce my plan by $10,000 at my passing, but I would still have generated wealth for my family and for my heirs. So life insurance is a fantastic tool, depending on how your plan is structured, and you have to work with an advisor, but you can gain interest, be paid dividends on your life insurance plan. So you're actually, back to our earlier conversation about soldiers creating money for you, your life insurance plan is continuously, creating cash. And to the point I made about taking a loan against the policy, let's say my policy, I take a loan of $10,000. The fantastic thing about life insurance is that you don't disrupt the compounding, and this is all dependent on how your plan is structured. You have to work with an advisor. But if your plan is structured correctly, if I wanted to take a loan against my policy, I wouldn't interrupt the compounding, which is the most important factor of any investment. It's the compound interest. It's the time that you need for your assets to grow. So I really want life insurance to be a first and foremost conversation in our community to ensure that our wealth is staying within us and being passed down from generation.
Yeah, and another important tool that we have at our disposal that we don't make use of is a will and final testament, because we may have a home that we want to ensure generational wealth goes on to our next generation. But without a will and final testament, that thing is going to end up in probate. It's going to end up around the world, and the government is going to take their portion. And also very important to think that if you have a child under 18 here in the US, that child cannot inherit any of your property. So the need for a trust. So all this is just putting the information out there. I don't want us to get overwhelmed with this information. I want us to take it one step at a time. So let us just start with a budget. Let us just start with what Felix talked about, directing our money, where this money needs to go. Because I think what we will find is that when we do a budget, we will see where we are spending too much and how we are able to redirect that money to be able to get to where we want to be. So not a conversation to be intimidated by. Don't say you do not have time. We all have a couple of minutes a day where we are spending time on social media. Maybe we shouldn't be so much on social media, or maybe we should take a break from the television and simply take a pen and paper, get a notebook so you can keep track of everything, and just write down your expenses. And you will be amazed when you see how much you're paying for the cell phone. So, just a very good way to start. But guys, I also want you to provide me with your email addresses in case anybody wants to reach out to you. So go ahead and post that in the private chat so I can share it. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you, they can do so. But let's take a couple more comments before we wind down. Daria Eugene, nice to see you. She says, I agree with you, Felix. After working hard to earn money, one should not feel guilty about that same money to feel good. It's not all about saving for the future. Life is short. Live well within a reason. Of course, yes, balance. The importance of balance. And Wallace says, need to understand investments or portfolios before investing. And that's why we bring out the experts. And that's why we give you their contact information so that you too can be informed and you can learn and you don't get overwhelmed. I just think that many of us get overwhelmed and we shut down because we don't understand the concept. So rather than saying, oh, let me have Felix or Heavis Badwill or Chris Mitchell explain this to me, we just shut it down and we move on to other things that seem less overwhelming. Marshall says, good evening. Is cryptocurrency uncontrolled, not traceable by banking institutions, That's what I've heard. Anybody want to comment on that? Marshall had a good question. So let me repeat it again. Is cryptocurrency uncontrolled, not traceable by banking institution? That's what I have heard. Any thoughts on that, guys?
So I don't have all the facts, but I
Good.
know that they have recently brought in some regulations around crypto. Yes, before it was a little bit, it was what they call unregulated. But I think now that the U.S. government has brought in some regulations, and what you can also, sort of hold your hat on is that some of the largest investment firms have now began to invest in crypto. So when I see Fidelity Investments, or I see, hedge funds, BlackRock investing in cryptocurrency, you can have confidence that these large players in the financial space are not going to put their cash in an asset that they don't believe in. They're going to invest their money where they know they can make money. So it does give a little bit more legitimacy to the crypto space. And I think, mentioning the issue with Sam Bankman-Fried earlier with the Ponzi scheme, I think that, that highlighted an issue in the crypto market. And now with the set regulations that have been put in place, I think you can have a little bit more confidence in investing in the crypto space.
Felix, any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I actually have to back up Chris on that one, because, I know that BlackRock, especially because I follow BlackRock a lot because they're the largest investment firm in the world. These guys basically have probably more money than God, So it's like, I remember years ago, I was actually looking at some of the places that they put money in, and I saw that there was this one stock I was looking at the time, Riot Blockchain, and I realized that they bought a lot of that company stock, right? And I actually followed what they did, and it turned out well, right? Because these guys, whatever you see BlackRock doing, it's probably wise to just follow whatever these guys do, because they really control a lot of the market. Now, as like just about whether it's unregulated, untraceable, and all that stuff, in a sense, whenever I say, I mean, that's all over the internet. Sometimes I tend to think like it might be a distraction, in a sense, to be perfectly honest. Because the thing is, while all that is happening, so many of the big boys are buying it, while people focus. Exactly. While people focused on, oh, is it traceable, untraceable? Cash isn't traceable, right? They say there was a time when there was a story about like, oh, drug dealers and everybody using it. Drug dealers been using cash since the beginning of time, So it's like, that is just like such petty distractions to just keep certain people out of it. But it's like, no, we're still at the beginning of it, just from my understanding. And again, it's not financial advice, but we still are kind of like in the beginning of where it is to be, because right now the crypto market is about 1 trillion, and what is expected to come to it within the next 1 to 2 years is about a $4 to $6 trillion, right? So from 1 trillion to 4 to 6 trillion, and they're trying to make you think of whether or not it's traceable or whatnot. Now, here's a fun fact. The cryptocurrencies, they're probably the most traceable asset there is because of the blockchain, right? Anyone can access the blockchain and see every single cryptocurrency transaction, So if you actually want to trace it, just visit the blockchain. It's there on the internet for everyone to see.
Right? Yeah, so I think, guys, we have to have another conversation about this. So we have to do another program. I'm also open to, if you want to do seminars, trainings, teaching people how to do budget, continuing getting that exposure so that our community know that these are the faces of the people we need to speak to when we have questions, because I'm sure everybody on Facebook and everybody who's listening to us on the radio and YouTube, I'm sure they have other questions, but there's only so much we can cover in 2 hours. So I went ahead and shared your email addresses, and for our listeners on the radio, Felix is FELIX 9144 at gmail.com. I will repeat that, FELIX 9144 at gmail.com. And Chris is Christopher Schuyler.Mitchell at gmail.com. So Christopher, ChristopherSkyler dot Mitchell, Mitchell at gmail.com. And if you do not catch the email addresses, you know my email address. I'll be more than happy to link you to them. Pushpast10 at gmail.com, pushpast10 at gmail.com. Let's see here. We have Claralyn Washington. Good night. I'm late. I'm watching Claralyn. Remember, you can always catch the replay of this program. So if anyone tuned in late and you would like to find out what happened in the beginning, YouTube and Facebook, Q95 FM Radio, and Push Past 10 on Facebook. So we want to thank everyone who joined us. Maureen Massicott, very informative financial advice. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And Maureen, again, you need to educate me more on crypto. Felix. So again, Maureen, I just gave out his email address so you can get.
She has my information. She's actually a client of mine as well. Yeah.
So here you go. So you already have the link up, Maureen. So give him a shout. So guys, thank you. Any final thoughts as we wind down?
No, I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity. This was amazing. And I very much enjoyed myself having the opportunity to speak with all of you and having the opportunity to speak with the Dominican people. I think we are taking the right steps to educate our people. It is not rocket science. They make it seem a lot more difficult than it is. In the age of technology, the tools are at our disposal: podcasts, YouTube, books. The abilities are all present. We just need to take the action to ensure that we are educating ourselves and passing that information down to our children and younger generation.
Yes, and we're going to continue this conversation because we certainly have to talk about those podcasts, YouTube and books as resources for our people. Jennifer Coffey, nice to see you. She says, good program. Thank you so much. Felix, over to you. Your final thoughts?
Oh, yes. What I'd just like to leave the people with is, as you know, anybody that's actually build any kind of meaningful wealth, there's a certain level of risk you have to take. So just to kind of, give the people who are afraid to get into, something that's new and something that they don't know much about. Even me, I didn't know too much about it. I'm the kind of a person is, if I just understand a little basic, I'm going to put money into it and then I'm going to learn about it while I go. Because the thing is, you have that emotional attachment to money. And when it's in it, trust me, you're going to invest the time to actually learn more about it, So I would just say, manage your risk, as in you have a certain amount that if you can lose it and it won't affect your lifestyle, then go for it. But there's an element of risk that you have to put in anything that is new or anything that, you think that you could get into. Because, it is a valid concern to be concerned about the money losing, right? About the money going to dust, really and truly. That is a valid concern. But I think everyone who has amassed a great amount of wealth has actually gone through that, and if you're not willing to put in that work, it's like you kind of want to light fire, but you don't want to take the smoke. The risk is the smoke that comes with this, so you have to take the risk, and that's what I just like to live with.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Felix. This has been a wonderful conversation. It's the beginning of a conversation that I hope that we will continue as we work to educate our community. And if you're listening and you're watching us right now, if you don't remember anything, just think of starting at the beginning. So a simple budget. Where is my money going every month? What simple changes can I make so that I am not necessarily trying to earn more money, but I'm thinking of how my money can make more money? Those little soldiers, Felix, that image is going to stay in my head for the rest of the night. Those little soldiers recruiting more soldiers in terms of money. And also the importance of paying down debt. The impulse buying that many of us do is not working in our favor. So have a budget. Have a budget for birthdays. Have a budget for Christmas. We all overspend on Christmas. And as a matter of fact, this is the time of the year when a lot of people get depressed because now they're seeing the credit card statements and realizing just how much money they spent So the importance of having a budget, the importance of paying down the so that now the focus begins to be on building that generational wealth. What are we leaving for our children? Eileen Charles, great to see you. Chris, repeat the title of your book. Yes, I was about to do so, Eileen. Thank you for the reminder. So he's holding up right now, and it's Wesley Wants a T-Rex, but you can simply look up on Amazon, The Little CEOs. So one more time, wherever you are, you have access to Amazon. Simply type in the search area, The Little CEOs, and it will bring you right to book. So very good. Jonathan says, I've never owned a credit card though. So good for you, Jonathan. So you don't have to worry about credit card there. But again, thank you for being here. Our audience on Facebook, YouTube, you've been fantastic. The people who called in, thank you for your contribution. And thank you for just listening to our program. We hope that you gain great insight. Lambi, as always, thank you to you, Mr. G, the Q95 family, for the opportunity to be here to share the expertise of our Dominican guests at home and abroad. Don't forget, follow Q95 FM radio and Push Past 10 on Facebook. And for the best in daily programming, Q95DA.com is where you would want to be. If you want to continue to follow us to see the success of the folks we've featured on this program, you can jump on pushpast10.com, pushpast10.com. So thank you for being here. Thank you to our guests. And with that, we say good evening. In case you're just wondering, one more time, our focus was on the future for our children. How do we build wealth? How do we create generational wealth to leave for our children? And how do we fund our education? And we had the pleasure of being joined by Mr. Chris Mitchell and Mr. Felix Thomas. And again, if you would like to get in touch with them, you can email me at pushpast10@gmail.com. So with that, thank you, gentlemen. You can say bye to the audience. Thank you, Lambi. And thank you, everyone who listened and viewed us. Until next time, you have yourself a pleasant good evening and a restful night. Take care. Thank you, guys.
Good night. Take care.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Joe! Rastafari. Home, oh, children, home.